Good morning, everyone. So please let me know once you are able to see my screen. So yesterday I've given you some basic introduction about AWS. So I've explained you how to create an AWS account, and also I've given you an information related to AWS, like what is meant by regions and what are all the different places these AWS data centers are located. So I've shown you the map and what are all the new places that are about to come and how the data center is going to look like. So these are all the things that we have discussed. So the basic overview we discussed. And today I'm going to start with an internal topic of AWS, like one of the service, one of the important service of AWS, that is VPC. So VPC stands for Virtual Private Network. I mean, in general, VPN we call it as. So the same thing in AWS point of view, we call it as Virtual Private Cloud. Sorry, I confused. Virtual Private Cloud. Okay. So let me explain you why we are going to use this VPC concept. Okay. So first, let me explain. Um, so in let's assume you are from company A and you want to utilize a service called EC2 in AWS. Okay, so if you are going to use a particular instance or a server from AWS, so first thing that you will be concentrating is security, right? You want to make it your application or your server to be secured. Let's assume I'll show you in a diagrammatical way. Let's assume there are two companies, so company A and company B. Let's assume these two companies are competitors. Okay. Uh, okay, we'll do one thing. Let's choose one region. So in region, as I told you before, we will have multiple availability zones. Let's assume there are two availability zones. Okay. So availability zones in the sense in a particular place. For example, if I choose a particular place called Mumbai, so in Mumbai Amazon is maintaining a data center, right? So in that Mumbai location they'll maintain more than two availability zones, or three or four, whatever the number they are. Okay, these availability zones are nothing but, so in a specific location they will maintain two different data centers. Like the distance between these data centers will be maintained at least 40 to 50 kilometers. Okay, so data center 1 and data center 2. But internally, these two data centers are directly connected. Okay, so as a cluster. Okay, so that we call it as availability zone. Okay, let's assume here this is one data center and this is the other data center. Now let's assume company A. Just give me a minute, guys. Okay. Now let's assume company A and company B, both are using the servers from the same region. Okay. So let's assume this is company A server. These two are the company A servers, and let's assume this is company B server. These two are the company B servers. Okay, so as these two servers are a part of the same data center, so that means this server can easily connect with this server. Let me name these servers. I'll make it as A1, or okay, I'll just name inside. So A1, A2. The same way B1, B2. Okay, so A1, A2 belongs to company A and B1, B2 belongs to company B. As you see here, A1 and B1 both are on the same data center, right? So that means it will be very easy that B1 can access A1 and A1 can access B1, right? Because they both are hosted on the same data center. But in real time, this kind of scenario is not encouraged because A1 is different company and B1 is different companies. Then A1 should not access B1 and B1 should not access A1, right? Am I right? So both should not be accessed. So in order to, in order to maintain these kind of things, what we are doing is we are bringing another concept in between here. So what I'm going to do, so I'll be creating a VPC here, which will be under your control like this. So that what are all the servers that are a part of this VPC, only those servers can communicate with each other. The remaining servers are not part of VPC, are not able to communicate. Okay, the same way for company B, we will create another VPC. Okay, so that's the main concept behind this VPC. In order to secure your servers which are used, which are the part of the same region, so in order to have an extra security, we are using a concept called VPC. So that's a basic overview of VPC. Is it clear, or do you want me to explain again? If you want me to explain again, please let me know.
Hi, this is Subhashni. I just joined. Can you just briefly overview?
Okay, fine. Um, so here, let's assume I have taken one region. So region in the sense AWS is hosted on different places throughout the world. Let's assume I have taken a region from India. That is, in India we have two locations. One is Mumbai and the other one is Hyderabad. Let me take a Mumbai location. So in Mumbai location, again we will have more than two availability zones. Okay, in general, the least availability zone that they are maintaining is two. So if you want to know how many availability zones that we have on a particular region, so you can log into your AWS account. On the right top corner you can see the different locations what we have. So these are all the regions. So for example, I want to go with Mumbai. I'll just click on Mumbai. Okay, and then if I go with EC2 instance, okay, and yeah, here if you come down you can see here, so these are all the zones. Okay, availability zones you mean. So in Mumbai we have three availability zones. Okay, so based on that you can come to a conclusion that the how many number of availability zones that we have. Okay, so here for an example, I've taken only two availability zones, and let's assume there are two companies called Company A and Company B, and these two companies hosted their servers on the same region as you can see on this diagram. So Company A is hosted on region 1, availability zone 1 and availability zone 2. At the same way, Company B is also hosted their servers on availability zone 1 and 2. Now, if you don't have any security in between these, because as these two servers are hosted on the same availability zone, that means same data center, that means somehow they can able to communicate with each other, right? Because if you see a data center, what are all the servers we internally we have? So all are interconnected, right? So that means A1 can communicate with B1 and B1 can communicate with A1. That is it. That's a possible scenario, right? So, but this should not be happen in real time because A1 and B1 both are competitors. So, in order to avoid that kind of scenario, I mean that kind of situations, so VPC concept came into picture. So in VPC, I'm going to create a separate VPC for company A and I'm going to create a separate VPC for company B so that what are all the servers internally required, so those internal servers can be launched on a company A server so that the external servers cannot communicate with it. Okay, so if I create a VPC, A1 cannot communicate with B1 and B1 cannot communicate with A1. Okay, is it clear now?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, fine. Okay, let's go with the part. Mm, so fine. So let me show you how to create a VPC. So before we create a VPC, few things that we need to remember. So VPC is a kind of a networking concept. So behind that, we should know about a CIDR block calculations. Okay, so I'll explain you. Don't worry about it. So there is a concept related to network that is about CIDR concept. So first of all, you have to make sure that I mean how many number of IPs that are required and how many number of IPs that we are going to get on a particular VPC based on the CIDR block. Okay, I'll show you how to calculate those number of IPs and all. I mean, you will definitely get it. I mean, you will directly get that information. So I'll try to explain you. Okay, it's not mandatory to learn, but if you have a concept behind it, so it will be useful in future. Okay, so you can directly get that information on Google, but I just want to explain you why we are using the CIDR block and what are the advantages of it. Okay, so first thing, let me go to AWS account. So, do you guys create this AWS account?
Yes.
Anybody facing any issue while creating this AWS account? So if you guys are facing any issues, let me know. So by end of the session, we'll connect and we'll try to resolve it. Okay. Okay, fine. So let me type once you have done with creation of your account. So this is how the dashboard it's going to look like. So even I have created account very recently. This is my new account. Earlier I used to use another one and now I'm using a new one. So this is the first time I logged in. And so this is how the dashboard is going to look like. And you can type an option called VPC. Okay. So just click on VPC. It will redirect you to the page where you can create your VPC. So for every region, by default, there will be one VPC created. So by default, that is what the VPC it is going to use. But if you want to use a different VPC or a customized VPC, you can create your own VPC. On the left side, you can see an option called Your VPCs. Just click on it. It is going to show you. Currently, I'm on a particular region, right? So North Virginia. So if you see, this is one of the VPC that has been created on North Virginia. Okay, so this is what the CIDR number it is given. Okay, so this is the default VPC. So every region is going to have a default VPC created. So I mean, if you don't create your own customized VPC and you directly launch your server, So that server will be part of this. That server will be part of this VPC. Okay. So now I just want to create my own customized VPC. So what I will do is I'll just click on create VPC. Okay. So here you can see VPC only. These are all the new options. I think earlier this option is not used to be there. Okay. So let me go with first VPC only. And what you have to do is you need to give a VPC name. So what I'll do is I'll just give it as my VPC. Okay. So you can give whatever the number you want. So now I'll just go with IPv4 CIDR block. So in CIDR block, okay, first let me open CIDR class A. So there will be one image. Let me open that. Just give me a minute. Okay, so this is one of the table, right? Okay. So here you can see an option called CIDR block, and in this CIDR block you see something like network bits. Okay, so in this network bits, based on the network bits, we are going to calculate how many number of IPs that you are going to have in a particular session. Okay, now for example, let me take an example called uh, /16. So okay, so here let me take an example called 16. Okay, so in 16, if you see the subnet, that is 255.255.0.0. Okay, so how the IP, first let me explain you how an IP is going to calculate it. So what I'll do is I'll open a notepad. Okay, so first of all, how an IP is calculated. Okay, so the max bit, I mean 255 in the sense 1 bit. Okay, so IP, whenever you are trying to connect with any device, so that device will be defined with an IP address, right? So that IP, using that IP address, we are going to connect to that device. This is what it is going to happen, right? So here 255.255.255 is a highest IP address, like that's the end of that IP address range, and the least range starts with 0.0.0.0. Okay, so starting from 0.0.0.0 and the ends with 255.255.255.255. This is what the IPv4 range between. Okay, now so for example, I've given a CIDR block as um, 10.20.0.0/16. So this is what the CIDR block I have given. Okay, now so how an IP addresses are going to calculate it. So these IP addresses are going to calculated based on the CIDR block class A. So I've given as /16. /16 in the sense the subnet mask that you have to consider. Okay, first what we have to do is let's take the max range, that is 255.255.255.255. This is the max range, right? So in that you need to subtract the subnet mask what we have. Okay, so 255.255.0.0. So I'll just give it 255.255.0.0. So you need to subtract these two. Now we will be getting a result like 0.0.255.255. This is what the value we are getting, right? After subtraction. Now, whatever the values that we have, so exclude zeros, and the remaining values whatever we have, so we need to multiply with each other. So we also need to add one more thing here. So because 0 is also calculated as one number, right? So total, okay, let me open calculator. So total 256 into 256. So total 65,536, right? Let me go here and let me check what's the value. So here you can see 65,530. So automatically we got the value as 65,534. That means the IP addresses for this particular CADR, I mean, or this particular VPC, so is going to be those many IP addresses will be allocated within this range. Okay, this is how the calculation is going to happen. Okay, is it clear, guys? Okay, let me choose one more. Um, let me go with mm, okay, let me go with this part, /22. Okay, so let me subtract it. So instead of 0 we have for /22 252.0 252. Okay, so after subtraction you will get 3. Okay, and the remaining part is here. So total 3, that means let me calculate 3 into 255. Sorry, you also need to add one more thing, right? So 0 will be also calculated. So 4 into 256. Here it is. Okay, so 1024. So this is what the calculation value that we are getting. Okay, so this is how a CIDR table will be CIDR number, based on the CIDR number, how many number of IP addresses that are going to be allocated to that VPC will be calculated. So that means you're going to have 1024 IP addresses. Okay, you're going to have 1024 IP addresses. Got it? Is it clear? Guys, let me know if you have any questions. If you want me to repeat this again, let me know. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah. So is it clear with this VPC?
I'm okay
CIDR?
so far.
Sorry?
I was saying I'm okay so far. Thanks.
Okay, fine. So what about others? If you guys don't feel hesitate, like if you have any question, like if you want me to explain any topic again and again, don't be hesitate. You just ask me, and I'm ready to explain 100 times again. Okay? So if you want me to repeat this topic again, let me know. Otherwise, we'll continue with the part. Okay, fine then. We'll continue then. Now, based on this CIDR block, we are going to have a number of IPs that as I told you before. And now let me go to my VPC, and here I'll give my CIDR block 10.20.0.0/16. This is what the CIDR block that I'm going to give. Okay, and tendency you can go with default and just click on create VPC. So these are all the only options that are required to create a VPC. And you just click on your VPCs where you can see there are two VPCs. Earlier, this is what the VPC what used to have. And now this is what the new VPC that we have created. And here, if you see, the IP addresses will be there in such a way that, okay, let me remove all these things. So 10.20.0.0 and the slash 16. So for this, the subnet mask is 255.255.0.0. Okay, so that means here 255 is the max bit, right? So there is no chance of increasing this. Okay, so the IPs will be starting from 10.20.0.1. Okay, so only last two are occupied, right? So it there are chance to increase this last two digit. Okay, the first IP will be ranging from here, and 10.20.0.2 is the next IP. So like that, the max will be 10.20.0.255. Okay, here from 1 to 255. The same way here, there will be another set of IPs 10.20.1.0 or 1.1. Here you will have another one that is 10.20.0.0. Here you will have the other one like 10.20.1.0. Okay, so like this, the IPs will be like 10.20.2.2, something like this. So the max IP will be like 10.20.255.255. So this is the max IP, and this is the first IP within this range. So if you calculate number of IPs, it will be around 65,000 change. Okay, is it clear? Any questions?
Actually, I doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understood the concept, but why we are selecting this? Why there is this type of concept, block concept?
So the reason why we are selecting this is, see, VPC is a concept based mainly concentrating on number of IPs. See, if you are going to select a particular, if you are going to create an server, so that server should have an IP address, right? So
Mm.
what should be the range of the IP address that should be allocated to that server? So that's the main concept behind this. See,
And
if I launch 10 servers on my VPC, So these 10 servers should be allocated with 10 different IPs. And these 10 different IPs, what's the range? Okay.
Okay. And this 10.20, the whatever we give, that is there any logic under this also 10.20 or
No, no, no.
just
This you can give whatever you want.
okay?
Okay, because this is a private network. This is not the network that you are going to take it from the cloud. Like, see, if you go with public network, so public network and private networks are two different networks. So public network, you have to follow the available IP you have to take. Because if someone is already using the same IP address, you're not supposed to take that. Okay, public IPs are different. But whereas here, this coming to this VPC, this is a private network concept. So you can take any range. That's your wish. If this company A and company B both are using same CIDR block, no issues because that is a different network and this is different network.
Okay, okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, Hi, you took here 16 class, right? So
Yes.
can I take any number other than
Yes.
16?
Yes. You can take any number, but AWS currently allowing you to take more than 15. Okay. So if you see here on this table, so if you see here, /15 and above, you have to take only /15 and above. Before that, this range is not accepted by AWS, but because if you see, if I go with /8, here you can see how many number of IPs that is going to have, right? So
Yeah.
if you increase this number, the number of IPs will be reduced. Like if you go with /30, that VPC is going to have only 2 IPs.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the
Okay.
first important thing that we need to consider.
So when we create this VPC, we will be in an imagination, like the company or any small startup company will be in an imagination. Okay, for me, you can hope as number 27, which is having 30. Okay,
Yeah.
so they have taken that 27 block, and after 2 years, they had a good business and want to increase. So can they change to different number like 26 or 25 like that?
That would be a different. I mean, that would be a difficult case because what you have to do is you need to stop running all your servers and because if you make some changes in your VPC, so that will impact your server as well. So that's the reason why we are taking a bigger number. Like if you see /16 in the sense, you are going to have 65,000 IPs. So that
Mhm.
means there is no scope of increasing utilizing 65,000 servers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the reason they'll go with a bigger number.
Oh, basically, we cannot more enlarge like when we want, if we want.
Yes. Okay. So I always prefer to go with a bigger number, even though you utilize or you don't. But if you have a spare IP addresses, that would be useful when you keep on increasing your servers. Okay. So the next concept that we are going to discuss is about subnets. Okay, so subnets. So subnets are nothing but a logical partitions of your VPCs. Okay, so logical partitions in the sense here in a VPC you're having multiple number of IPs. Like for example, if I go with /16, so that means I'm going to have 65,000 IP addresses. Okay, but my requirement is somewhat different. Like I want some servers should be publicly accessible and some servers should be internal accessible. Like for example, in real time, let's assume there are two layers. Layers in the sense, for example, in real time, applications will be maintained in different layers. Okay, so let's assume there are two layers. One is an application layer, and the other one is a database layer. Okay, so first thing is application layer. So application layer, the main usage of application is it runs your application and it allows you to access your application. That is what we want. So in this scenario, application layer should be publicly accessible, because see, if you are running an application and if I can't access that application, what's the use of it? Am I right? So this application should be publicly accessible, right? And whereas the database layer, so database layer doesn't require any public accessibility, because it will be utilized by the application layer. So internal communication will be sufficient. So this is what the scenario what I have. So in order to achieve this, so you can create subnets. So subnets are of two types. One is public subnet and the other one is a private subnet. Okay, so if it is a public subnet, then your if it is a public subnet, then whatever the servers that you launch on this public subnet can be publicly accessible. And if I launch a particular layer on a particular private subnet, so these servers will be utilized for internal communication purpose, but external access will not be there. Is it clear? So total we have 65,000 IP addresses, right? So these 65,000 IP addresses, you can make it into parts. Like for example, if you bought a brand new laptop, let's assume. So they have mentioned that you are going to have 1 TB hard disk. Okay, so internal memory is 1 TB hard disk. Now what we will do generally, so first what we will do, we'll make partitions like drive C, drive D, drive E, F, something like that, right? So why we are doing this? So I want to store some, I want to make an order, like I want to store some study related information in drive D, and I want to store some music or movies or something like that in drive E, something like. So this is how we generally do, right? The partitions. Are you guys aware of it, right? So the same way here, the partitions will be happen like total number of IPs is 65,000 what we have based on the CIDR block. And now what I will do, I'll make it into parts. So you can create n number of parts. That's up to you. What I will do is like I'm going to take 3 parts or 4 parts. So that part A will be public access subnet and the part B will be a private subnet. So in that way we can manage. And private subnet, on private subnet you can launch your database. On public subnet you can launch your application, so that your application will be publicly accessible, and whereas your database will be internally accessible. Is it clear? Fine. Let me explain how to create a subnet. So first of all, once you are done with your VPC, so the next part we will go with a subnet creation. So by default, you already have few subnets. So as you can see here, these are all the subnets that are allocated for your default VPC. So as you know, as I told you before, there will be a default VPC. Okay, so in that default VPC, you're going to have these subnets. Now I'm going to create my own customized subnet. Okay, so again here in subnet also you have to give your CIDR block. Okay, so but here remember, this CIDR block should be the number, I mean, the whatever the number that we have given, right, /16 something. So that value should be greater than the value what we have given for VPC. Okay, so for example, in this diagram, if I use 16, so the subnet should be greater than 16. You can use anything in this range. For example, if I use for subnet as 24, I mean for VPC as 24, okay, so that means max number of IP addresses is 254 IP addresses. But I can't go creating a subnet with less than this number. Like if I go with 24, I have to use the number ranging from 25 to 30, okay, for creation of my subnet. But if I go with 20, so I can't do it because the total number of IP addresses itself is 256, 254 IP addresses. But for 20, if you see 4094 IP addresses, where we don't have those many IP addresses, right? So that's the main thing. So the main rule before we create a subnet is whatever the CIDR number that we have given, so that number should be greater than the number which we have given for VPC. Okay, if I go with 16, so I can go with 17 to 30 range, or if I go with 20, the range will be from 21 to 30. Okay, so like that you can create n number of VPCs. There is no limitation, but IP addresses should be available. Fine. So now I'm going to create my subnet. So what I'll do is I'll just select the VPC for what I want to create my subnet. So this is what the CIDR block that I've given for my VPC, and you can create multiple subnets at a time. So what I'll do is I'll just give my subnet one, my subnet one. Okay, and you can also select the availability zone, in which availability zone you want to create. Like if you see here on this diagram, so this is one availability zone and this is one availability zone. You can select on where you want to create a subnet. So it's not mandatory, but if you want to select, you can select. So right now I'm on North Virginia. So in North Virginia, we have total 6 different availability zones. Okay, remember, in North Virginia, we have total 6 availability zones. So this is the biggest data center throughout the world, with respect to Amazon. So I can choose any option, like I'll go with US East 1A, and the CIDR block you have to give. So that should be within the range, like 10.20.1.0/24 I'm giving. So /24 in the sense it is going to have total 254 IP addresses, as you can see here. /24 in the sense it is, this subnet is going to have 254 IP addresses. Okay, and the first subnet was created, and the next one, my subnet 2, and this one I'll be taking it as availability zone 1B, and here I'll give a CIDR block as 10.20.2.0/24. Okay, so earlier I've given as 1.0 and now I've given as 2.0. Okay, so let me create only 2 subnets. If you want to create another also, you can do it. So let me just click on create subnet. So by default, once you create a subnet, by default these subnets will act as a private subnets. Okay, so there is no option where I've given private or public subnets. So by default, when you create a subnet, those subnets will be act as a private subnet. But there is an option to change a private subnet into a public subnet. So in that, what you have to do is first you select one subnet and go to actions. On the top right corner, you can see an option called actions, and you can you can go with subnet settings. Okay, here you can see an option called enable auto assign of public IP address. You just select this option. Okay, so automatically a public IP will be allocated for the subnet. So based on this option only, you're going to convert a private subnet into a public subnet. Okay, any questions you have? I'm sorry, I'm getting Nalini, do you have any questions?
No.
Can you please make yourself
Okay.
on? Okay, fine. So once you select this option, automatically this subnet will start behaving like a public subnet. If you uncheck this box, then by default it is going to act as a private subnet. Okay, I'll just want to convert this into a public subnet, so I'll just select this option and then I'll just click on save. So now you can see my subnet 2 will act as a public subnet. And the same way, if I go with my subnet 1, go to edit subnet settings and I'll enable this and I'll just click on save. So now both these subnets are a part of a public subnets. Okay, because auto assigning of a public IP will be there. Okay, is it clear with the subnets concept? Fine. Now the next part is internet gateway. See, you have created a VPC, but this VPC should be connected with internet. Like for example, your hosted server, right? So this server should be publicly accessible. So how it is going to publicly accessible? So first of all, you have to remember one thing, that whenever you create a VPC, that VPC should be connected with internet gateway in order to have a public accessibility. Okay, so internet gateway is nothing but a service which provides internet for a VPC. Okay, so if you don't connect internet gateway to VPC, even though you have multiple public subnets or whatever, but you can't access it. Okay, so the next part is about internet gateway. So, and remember one thing, so one internet gateway can be connected with only one VPC. Okay, so if I want to connect an internet gateway with two VPCs, it is not possible. One VPC should be connected with one internet gateway, and one internet gateway should be connected with only one VPC. Okay, so right now you see there is a one internet gateway. I think this is a default internet gateway which has been attached for default VPC. Now I'm going to create my own customized internet gateway. So I'll just click on create, and now I'll be giving a name. So I'll give it as my IGW, so my internet gateway, and then I'll just click on create internet gateway. So it will immediately create this. And if I go back to internet gateways, you can see here a new internet gateway has been created. But if you see the state as detached, so we have just created this internet gateway, but we have not assigned this internet gateway to any of the VPC, right? So now I'll show you how to assign this. So I'll just select that internet gateway and I'll go to actions, and then you can see an option called attach to VPC. Just click on this and you need to select which VPC that you want to select that is available. So just select it and then click on attach gateway. So automatically your internet gateway has been attached to a particular VPC. As you can see here, this is the VPC ID and this is your internet gateway ID. Fine. And the next part that is pending is a routing table. Now, why do we require a route table? So this route table will decide where the request has to be sent. Okay, for example, let's assume server A and server B both are a part of your guys, just give me a minute, I'm getting a call. I'm sorry. So let's assume you have two servers in a same VPC, server 1 and server 2. Okay, now these two servers want to communicate. Like server 1 wants some information from server 2. So these two are internal servers, right? So server 1 and server 2 both are hosted on the same VPC, right? Now server 1 first sends a request. So that request will be sent to a routing table. Okay, we call it as router. So that will be sent to a router, and router analyze what's the IP address of the destination. Okay, so based on that analyze part, so router will decide, okay, this is an internal communication, we don't require to send it outside. So this router will decide, okay, is it an internal communication or it's an external part. Like if server 1 wants to download something from internet, so the same request will be sent to router, and router will decide that, okay, this is an file which needs to be downloaded from external part. So immediately it will send that request to internet gateway. So via internet gateway, that will be reached to external internet service, and in the same way it will download a file. Okay, so now router plays an important role in having a communication. Is it an internal communication or external communication? So the router will be going to decide it. Okay, so as you can see here, this is how the router plays an important role. So if it is an internal communication, so within the range it will immediately send it back. And if it is an external communication, so router will send that information to the internet gateway. Okay, so this is how a router is going to work. So by default, when you create a VPC, a default router will be also created. But if you want to make some customizations, you can do it. So this is your VPC router that is being created. Okay, I'll show you what are all the rules that we have. So we have an option called routes, right? So let me click on edit routes. Okay, by default you have a router called 10.20.0.0/16, which is indicating as local. That means when any IP range within these two, as I told you before, the first scenario, like server 1 and server 2 both are hosted on the same VPC. So the communication should be happen between these two servers. So router will decide as a local request. That means it will directly send internally within the VPC only. It won't send it to internet gateway. Okay, so that will be communicated as an internet routing. But if I want to send a request other than this IP, like if you have a different IP addresses, I want to send that request to external world. So how it is going to happen? So what I will do is I'll just click on add route, and I'll give as 0.0.0.0.0/0. So that means all the remaining IP addresses. So exclude this. Okay, it will automatically exclude within this range, in the sense it will consider as a local, and the remaining IP addresses will be calculated by this. Okay, so that thing will be sent to internet gateway. So I'll be selecting my internet gateway. Okay, and then you just click on save. So automatically a routing table will be created. So that will be decided when there is a range of IP address within the VPC range. So it will consider as a local request, and the request will be sent to that particular server. If the if the IP address, if the server is different one, so it will send to internet gateway. Okay, this is how a routing table will be calculated. Is it clear with the concept today? So in order to create a VPC, these are all the 4 things that we have to take care. So let me recall the topic again. So first requirement is a VPC. So VPC is a concept of maintaining an external security for your servers. Okay, and then once you create a VPC, so based on the CIDR block, you have to create a VPC. So once you create this CIDR block, the number of IP addresses will be allocated for that VPC. And the next part is subnets. So subnets are nothing but a logical partitions of your VPC. Like total 100 VPC, 100 IP addresses. Let's assume I have 100 IP addresses. So what I can do is I can make it into parts. Like I can create 25 IPs in one subnet, 25 IPs in the other subnet, 25 IPs in the other subnet, in that way. Okay, so again, these subnets are of 2 types. One is public subnets and the other one is private subnets. So private subnets are used for internal communication purpose, and whereas public subnets are used for external part. Okay, and the next one is internet gateway. So in order to provide an internet service for your VPC, so we create a option called internet gateway. And then after, we also used we also used a routing table configuration, a router which will decide where the request has to be shared. Okay, if it is an internal purpose, so router will consider as a local part, and if it is an external purpose, router will send that request to internet gateway. Okay, is it clear? So these are all the 4 things that we discussed today with a practical experiment. So if you want, you can practice this, and also remember, tomorrow I'm going to start with another concept called EC2. So before we create EC2, so we will be considering this VPC. So that's the reason why I have explained about these VPCs and other things today. Okay, is it clear, guys? Any other questions? So if you don't have any questions, we'll end up this meeting for today. Okay, then. Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.